Hi, I'm Dan Schmitt. I do a motorcycle racing TV show, Team Chicago Channel. My email is teamdan45@gmail.com. My website is teamchicago.tv. We're at EAA AirVenture 2024. We'll go ahead in and see what's going on. I had the opportunity to talk to a great number of pilots with vintage World War II aircraft. Going to learn a lot. This is really a great show. So let's head on in and see what's going on. EAA 2024. And don't forget my email, teamdan45@gmail. And I'd love to hear from my audience. The EAA AirVenture Experimental Aircraft Association may be one of the largest camping events in the entire nation, maybe the world. Thousands and thousands of people come to camp, drive up and camp, and also fly in and camp. This is a huge event. It is 7:30 Monday morning, the first day, and thousands of cars will be arriving, bringing tens of thousands of participants and enthusiasts. It may be the largest event for selling new aircraft. But first I'm at Fighter Town. This is where World War II aircraft gather, fighter aircraft. And I spot a pilot owner, and I had the opportunity to talk to Scott Glover.
Hello, I'm Scott Glover here at Oshkosh 2024. I'm sitting in front of Lou 4, which is a P-51D model Mustang, and we're part of a museum in Texas called Mid-America Flight Museum. We're based in Mount Pleasant, Texas, about 100 miles east of Dallas, and we brought the Corsair as well. That's built up as a Marine's dream, and it's being flown by a good friend of mine, Paul Barnett. Two very different aircraft. Everybody wants to compare the Mustang and the Corsair.
Well, there's always been a debate which one was faster because they were the two fastest prop planes.
Well, definitely the P-51 is a faster airplane. I'll set that record straight. For any type of a cruise or even a full throttle run, the P-51 will outrun the Mustang. Just to give you the P-51 outrun the Corsair. Just to give you an idea, we cruise here about 260 knots. It cruises about 220 knots. I'm burning 60 gallons an hour. He's burning 85 gallons an hour. So that's the cruise on a Mustang. So 50 mile an hour faster, but here's the deal. What's the goal? You know, there's a trade-off in aviation. Everything's a trade-off. If the goal was to climb to 10,000 feet, the Corsair would be level at 10,000. This would be passing through 4,800. That thing will climb. It will really climb. And that's what 2,000 horsepower will do. It takes horsepower to go up. So it was a very different airplane. The Corsair was built to fight against the Japanese Zero. That was its purpose. Very few Corsairs in the European theater. This was designed to protect our bombers going to Europe. It did other things, but that was its primary goal, and it did a phenomenal job because it had the range. It doesn't have the range at 260 knots, but if you slow it down to B-17 speeds, 180 mile an hour, 170, 80, 90 mile an hour, this thing will go forever. It just sips fuel. And so that was it had two drop tanks, and so it would carry that fuel and use out of those drop tanks, and then hopefully at the end come home on the main tanks. That's what it did. P-51 was not an airplane that really liked to get shot at. It has a radiator in it. You know, how many people have ever lost an engine in a car? It's seldom to lose an engine in a car, but how many people have ever had the radiator overheat? So, you know, 122 through a lot of spots on this airplane will take a P-51 down in just a couple of minutes. Corsair, it can accept bullets. The airplane that flew more missions than anything in World War II, I do not have one, is the P-47. That airplane right there, you basically couldn't shoot it down. I mean, it was just would take just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of bullets coming through the back of that airplane, and it's going to keep flying. This one wouldn't do that. So all very different purposed airplanes. They're just amazing. This one was restored as a cruiser. I've got long-range fuel on it. I've got nice avionics. I can shoot a WAS approach to 200 feet, autopilot. That one was restored as it last flew off the carrier. So a very authentic restoration, and I wouldn't change anything about either one of them. I like both of that. So you'll see a lot of that here. You know, the pilots or the person doing the restoration, what was the purpose of that restoration? This is a corporate airplane right here. I mean, I can get in this thing and fly it 1,000 miles just so easily, shoot an approach and make it in. That's more of a fair weather flyer. I fly in good weather anyway, so I don't do the bad weather stuff, but that's how this airplane was restored.
Scott invited me to sit inside his wonderful aircraft.
Of course, this is not original. This is later avionics and panel. All this is all original. The trims, the flaps down here, the landing gear here, throttle, prop, and mixture controls right here. That's all original P-51 Mustang. But the panel itself has been
because you got modern stuff.
Modern instruments in it. That's the way it's restored. It wouldn't take much to turn this one back into exactly original. Just change the panel basically.
Well, this is great. So this is a two-seater, is it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
No, these things sound great. The only other thing I would have asked about was the engines, because this is a V12, and that's 18, right? That's two nines.
That's two nines. That's a R28.
So you own this one?
Yes, sir. I wouldn't say these are rare. There's 160 of these things still.
Oh, right.
There's only 34 P-50 Corsairs. I say these are a dime a dozen, not really.
Thank you, Scott. As we look at the Vogue F4U Corsair making 2,000 horsepower with the 18-cylinder radial engine. The Mustangs use either the Packard Merlin V12 or the Rolls-Royce Merlin V12, 4 valves per cylinder, overhead cam engine. And lucky for us, 4 P-51s landed, and now they are parking these 4 beautiful aircraft, and we'll get a chance to hear what a V12 engine sounds like. What a wonderful sound. And now Wes Stower's he's helping his passenger out of this P-51D, and he was happy to talk to me. Let's hear what Wes has to say.
My name's Wes Stower from Knoxville, Tennessee. This is a 1944 model P-51D Mustang built in June of '44, so it just turned 81. And it's painted up in the colors of Captain Jesse Fry, who flew in the 357th Fighter Group and had 2 kills and came home alive. And we honor his memory with this airplane.
So tell me a little bit, do you own this plane? Or
I own it with 2 other good friends, and I've flown it on it myself outright and then with some partners since 2006. And we've had it's a great experience to get to fly it and get to share it with the public.
So do you get an opportunity, did you restore it? Were you involved with the restoration at all? Or?
The major restoration was done by Bob Ferguson back in the 90s, but we're always doing things to it. I mean, we've reconstructed several where there's corrosion, you got to replace components. Obviously, you go through engines on these things, rebuilding propellers, fixing things that wear out. So you're always working on them. But the major restoration was back in the 90s.
Right. So it's just like owning an old motorcycle.
Very similar, very similar. Except it has English standard. It's a Merlin. It's Rolls-Royce Merlin.
Right.
You have English standards. It's not SA. It's not metric. It's English.
Right. Like my Triumphs.
Yes, sir. Just like your Triumph.
Thank you, Wes. In 1940, the British Air Force approached North American to build a plane similar to the P-40. They designed the XP-51 and it first flew October 26, 1940. And it reached the speed of 382 miles per hour using the Allison V12 engine. The P-51D had a teardrop canopy, used either the Rolls-Royce built or the Packard built Merlin V12 engine, and 7,952 P-51Ds were built. We are now looking at the Spitfire, Submarine Spitfire Mark IV. We're looking in the interior, and you see it uses a standard stick control. This aircraft uses either the Rolls-Royce built or the Packard built Merlin V12 engine. We are now looking at the Hawker Hurricane Mark XII. Both of these aircraft are from the Mike Porter Aircraft Collection in Ottawa, Canada. I had the opportunity to talk to the chief pilot for that collection, Dave Hatfield.
My name's Dave Hatfield. I'm the chief pilot for the Mike Potter Aircraft Collection in Ottawa, Canada. So it's quite a large collection, but we brought 3 World War II fighters here to Oshkosh, the biggest general aviation air show in the world. And we're going to be flying them here, and they're all powered by Rolls-Royce Merlin engines.
12-cylinder, overhead cams.
Yeah, so these are V12s, and each cylinder has 4 valves, 2 intake, 2 exhaust. It's a supercharged geared engine, and this particular one in the Spitfire has 2 impellers, 2 stages for the supercharging, which heats everything up so much that up there's a separate radiator. It's completely different from the normal cooling system.
Right.
And it has its own radiator way down under there, one of those 2 segments. And that cools the charge so that when it goes into the cylinders, it doesn't flash off, before it gets in. And densifies the charge too, so you get more power out of it. And this is built by the United States by Packard, even though it's a Rolls-Royce Merlin. During the war, Packard built a lot of Merlins, right?
Yes.
So I have about 150 hours behind this particular Merlin, and it's a good one. I love this one. It
So
starts well. And
this is the plane that won the Battle of Britain.
Yeah, well, this one and the Hawker Hurricane right beside it.
Oh yeah, right.
When it comes to making machines, as you all know from motorcycles, this was a new technology in the late 30s for England. They didn't make monocoque, like aluminum structures, aluminum-sided structures where the siding takes the load, right? That was a new thing for England. Instead, they used steel tube and covered it in fabric or wood, and that's the Hurricane we're parked beside. So they were able to make Hurricanes quickly, just same technology. It didn't have to retrain a workforce. But for this, They had to build a whole new giant mass production factory in the middle of England and then train people to manage it.
In the middle of a war, too.
Yeah. Well, that's the reason that Packard was asked to build Merlins, because they were worried that their own manufacturing plants in England were going to get bombed. And they were bombed.
Yeah, they did license, like you said, Packard,
Yeah.
right here in Ohio.
Sure.
I probably drove past that factory one time.
Yeah, I don't know where the actual factory was. Was it
There's
around Detroit?
a long,
Yeah.
on some highway, it's about 2 miles long of just continuous buildings. So I'm thinking that was all from the war.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
And Packard, as I understand it, didn't have drawings. There weren't proper blueprints that came with the. They got about three demo engines, because it was the U-boat war, the Battle of the Atlantic, and a crisis happening. So they didn't get the drawings they wanted, so they had to reverse engineer the engine. So there are subtle differences between the Packard Merlins and the Rolls-Royce Merlins.
Right. So you get to fly the other one too?
I have. I'm the chief pilot there, so when we got that aircraft through its restoration process last year, I did the test flights on it, and then I passed it over to the designated aircraft manager and pilot. So it's better just to stick with one airplane, because they're all a little bit different.
Right. So you've flown it 150 hours.
Yep. Yeah, I took this out to Vancouver Island on the west coast of Canada one year and brought it back. It was a big trip.
That's great.
And it doesn't carry a lot of gas either. So fuel tank is right up here, right over the center of the wings from center of gravity. And it's not a very big one. So going places in a Spitfire is a flight planning exercise.
Thank you, Dave. Now, what was the Battle of Britain? When the Germans invaded Poland in 1939, the Brits declared war on Germany. But the British were driven out of France in 1940 at Dunkirk. As I tap on the side of this Hurricane, you can see it has a canvas covering for half of the fuselage. And we'll look at a few of the drawings of the Hurricane. On July 10th of 1940, the Luftwaffe began bombing ports and shipping. On August 13th, they launched their main offensive. At that time, the Germans had 1,300 bombers and 1,200 fighters. The Brits only had 600 fighters. But the Brits did have radar. As we see this logo for the Mike Porter collection, the Luftwaffe lost over 600 planes to the British losses of 260. By mid-September, the Brits were shooting down more aircraft than the Germans could build. By mid-October, the Germans ended their offensive. The Brits won the Battle of Britain. And now we spot a P-51C, Red Tail Squadron, honoring the Tuskegee Airmen. And I had the opportunity to talk to Alan Moore. He's going to tell us about this aircraft and a few others.
My name is Alan Moore.
All right.
And I'm with the Commemorative Air Force Red Tail Squadron that sponsors this P-51. So this P-51 was rebuilt. The CAF had done a rebuild of a P-51C which crashed, I believe, in 2004 at an air show in Red Wing, Minnesota. And they decided that they were going to rebuild the aircraft again, which this is what the end product was. Beautiful. It was done in Wahpeton, North Dakota. And this first started flying in 2009, right?
Well, after our rebuild, it was flying before late 90s.
Yep. But this was completed in 2009. So this aircraft is in the colors of the Red Tail Squadron, which is a primarily black squadron.
Right, and they were protecting the bombers over Germany.
Yep. So if you saw the TV series, it was on Apple TV called Masters of the Air. They did have a couple of episodes in that talked about. So that featured primarily the 100th Bomb Group that flew out of England, and they had a couple of episodes it talked about the escort activities that were provided by the Red Tails.
Right.
So, but the Red Tails' claim to fame was they never lost a bomber that was under their protection.
Oh, really?
So
all the bombers, it did go down.
So yeah, boy, believe me, imagine, crew members pretty thankful for that.
Well, and the one thing about it is, in Europe, they only flew 25 missions, and they were done.
Well, 25, and then as the war went on, they increased the number.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
But it was safer than it later on.
It was based on, so you had missions and hours accumulated.
Right.
So it was 25, then it started to be 30, 35.
And my uncle flew in New Guinea, and it was 50 in the Pacific.
Just astounding. You think you go up, you are flying at 20 to 25,000 feet in an airplane that basically is open, where the 50 caliber gun mounts are in the back, and you're wearing your sheep's wool lined flight suit. But at those altitudes, the temperatures are 30 below, 40 below zero.
It's unbelievable.
And then let's fly through some flak.
Right.
And then fighters, and then you're going to go through the flak again when you're done.
When you're coming back, right.
And 7 hours later or 6 hours later, and then you think, that was the worst experience of my life. Thank God I don't have to do it again. Not. You're going to go up again and again. So if you ever saw the movie 12 O'Clock High with Gregory Peck that was made in 1949, that really drove home the whole notion of how far can you push these guys.
Right.
And I mean, these guys, these are guys that just graduated from high school. 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds that are being put up in these airplanes. Even these fighters, the bombers that were flown, the old men in the squadron were in their mid-20s.
Right.
So there was a great film that was done on the P-47, and they were stationed in Italy, and so they were introducing various guys that are in the squadron, and so then they got to the colonel. He's the old man. He's 26. So, you just can't imagine that, the war was fought on the backs of so many of these young guys. Flying these P-51s or flying, whatever fighter or bomber they happen to be in.
So what, do you fly this, or are you a mechanic?
I do not. I'm part of the ground crew. Okay. So basically, I'm here. This is my first year in Oshkosh with the P-51. So
great.
I've been around this plane for years, but the first time that I've been here.
First time you've been here.
So, yeah. Great. And then the next model after this, P-51D, which is the one that you most commonly see, that introduced the bubble canopy.
Yes.
But, basically still flies the same. And just an absolutely wonderful aircraft. And there's a lot of Mustangs here.
Yes. And Corsairs.
Oh my gosh, Corsairs. There's actually, you've got a Dauntless dive bomber over here, which made its name in Midway, in bombing the Japanese carriers. And those you don't see very often. So
no, there aren't many dive bombers.
I mean, you look at the Mustangs. There's always a lot of Mustangs.
Yeah. Very good.
Corsairs, we got a couple over here. I think and there's one beyond.
Right, I got to talk to one guy already.
So years ago, I was part of a museum in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, where I'm from, called Planes of Fame, and we had 26 aircraft at that museum on the Flying Cloud Airport in Eden Prairie, which is not that big of an airport. And we had a Mustang, we had a Spitfire, we had a B-25, we had a B-17, we had a Spitfire, we had a TBM. I mean, just all sorts of flying planes. And we would have a Memorial Day show where we would bring in people from outside. So Joe Foss, who is governor of South Dakota at one time, he was an ace in the Pacific, made his name in Guadalcanal at Henderson Field. We actually had several Medal of Honor winners one year when we were honoring those Medal of Honor winners from the Pacific. So Jefferson LeBlanc, Marion Carl. I mean, it was such a great honor to meet these guys. B-25s, we did a Doolittle celebration, so we had a bunch of the Doolittle Raiders. We had 5 B-25s at the museum that weekend.
That's great.
Yeah, unfortunately that shut down in 97. But you know, it's always a pleasure to stay in contact with this community. You know, my associate here been doing it much more involved than I have been. But, you know, I finally made it this year, so we'll be babysitting this through Wednesday. But I'm looking forward to a great show.
Thank you, Alan. Let's go get a couple of the Vogue F4U Corsairs, one for the Navy and one for the Marines. Two very important World War II aircraft, P-51D with the teardrop canopy and a P-51C with the older canopy style. And then the two aircraft that won the Battle of Britain, the Hawker Hurricane Mark XII and the Supermarine Spitfire Mark IX. How lucky am I to learn all this great information. For more information on Experimental Aircraft Association, go to EAA.org or airventure.org and make plans to join us next year, July 21st through 27, 2025. Contact me, and I love to hear from my audience. It's teamdan45@gmail.com. Remember, you can always search on YouTube with Dan Schmitt Motorcycle Racing for great motorcycle racing action, Dan Schmitt Politics, to learn what makes America great. And I highly encourage you to visit the World of Motorcycle Museum. They're in Winamac, Indiana, 4 miles south of North Judson on Indiana Highway 39. Give them a call first at 574-896-3172. It's a great trip and a great collection of motorcycles. Pick up your copy of the Team Chicago History Package at Rich's Yamaha in Lockport, Illinois. Give them a call first at 815-838-8130. Their website is richesyamaha.com. Pick up your copy of the Team Chicago History Package. Here's a few dates for Walnut Swap Meets. If you want to learn more about motorcycles, there's nothing like going to a motorcycle swap meet. At Springfield, Ohio, to Woodstock, Illinois, walnutswap.com. Got a couple races coming up, Peoria and Springfield.